So the big news is the Canadian unemployment rate, it's up to 5.8%. Now you might be wondering, what does it mean for me? Well, this video is all about that. Let's have a look at some of the facts and what it actually means for you. So, as we spoke, the Canadian unemployment rate, it's rising up to 8.58%, at least in November. These are the newest numbers. So, it's actually gone up by 0.1%. So, not looking too good, but let's have a quick look at, some of the key highlights. When looking at it, the rate has gone up to 5.8%. Previously, it was about 5.7. But at the same time, the economy, they've added about 25,000 jobs in November. So this is actually higher than what they were expecting. But at the same time, so is the unemployment rate. They weren't expecting the unemployment rate to be higher than 5.7%, so it's gone up. Now, the concerning bit that this is the fourth monthly increase in the past 6 months in the unemployment rate. What this potentially means is that there's a weakening in the economy, so could be we might be ending up in a recession pretty soon, because even when you look at, the sales numbers for the past few months, they aren't looking all that great. The only places where there's people have been buying has been auto parts or gasoline. Well, you could guess what the reason behind that could be. But apart from that, pretty much expenditure in everything else, all the different categories like retail, sale, etc., it was lower. So some concerns there about where the economy might be going. Now, looking at the jobless rate, from June 2023 up until September, we're seeing actually it's kind of going up. So, back in June, it was sub 4 numbers, where the unemployment rate was, but now it's at about 5.8 in November. So it's actually trending upwards. So there's some concern there. And, when we're looking back in June, there were about 60,000 jobs added. So there was additional jobs that people could apply for and actually get them. Also, the unemployment rate back in June was 5.4%. But now it's gone up to 5.8%. So it's actually on the rise, the unemployment rate. So don't worry. Let's kind of look at what's happening in entire Canada. So we'll look at unemployment rate and percentage point change in the month of November. So Canada-wide, unemployment is at 5.8%, and there's been an increase of 0.1%. It's substantial when you compare it to what it was in June. Now looking at exactly let's start with BC. In BC, the unemployment rate has actually gone down by 0.1%. So it's at 5.3%. For Alberta, we're at about 5.9%. So pretty in line with what's happening Canada-wide. So increase of unemployment by 0.1%. In Ontario, unemployment rate is about 6.1%. It's pretty high compared to other provinces. When you compare it to Nunavut, of course, it's lower. But then again, when you consider how densely Ontario is populated, this is a lot of pain right here. And of course, when you look at PEI as well, Prince Edward Island, it's 1.9% that it went up by, and a total of 8.1% in unemployment rate. Again, there's a lot of pain right now, Canada-wide. So, if a lot of people have been laid off, so the majority of the increase has been because of those numbers, because of the layoffs. So, if you've been laid off recently, I'm sorry. I hope you get something soon and you can start working, and I hope it doesn't last too long for you. Now, let's look at exactly what's happening in some of the major cities. We'll look at unemployment rate of what's been in the past in April and what it is now in November. In Windsor, Ontario, it has been the highest unemployment rate so far. It's at about 7.6%. In Toronto, you're looking at about 6.6%. And Kitchener, you're about 6.2%. And Waterloo about 6.1, sorry. Edmonton is 6.2. So some cities are doing worse than others. If you look at Kelowna, although there has been some increase of unemployment rate, but it's only been to 3.9%. So it's way below the Canadian average, still faring a lot better. Now, I'm not saying move to these cities and start applying for work, but hey, you know what? If you're open to finding work somewhere else, maybe look at some of the cities, like underneath, below the 5.8% and try there. Of course, look at the population, look at what, opportunities there might be. So I'm just saying, I don't know how I feel about moving to Winnipeg, but been there once, did not like. So, hey, but unemployment rate is at 4.1%. It's like a percent lower than, like countrywide unemployment rate there. So still not too bad. Now, the future expectations. So what can you expect in the future? Now, the good news is, well, first the bad news. If, unemployment rate kind of keeps going the way it is going, there's going to be like quite a bit of a slowdown in the economy. So you can expect somewhat of a recession. I don't know if you want to call it a recession already, but I mean, it could be, it might not be, whatever you might want to think. So technical definitions aside, let's kind of like move forward. If, the economy kind of goes down further, we can see decrease in interest rates. So that's the bright side. A lot of people are paying a lot in mortgages. So we can expect these interest rates to kind of like start going down maybe mid next year. So you could see some reprieve there. But again, it's still like wait and watch kind of thing. A lot of people in the finance industry are expecting, like the interest rates to kind of like start dropping a little bit sometime next year in Q3. So I don't know. We'll see. Now, you might be wondering, so which people or which industry is suffering the most because of the, because of the unemployment? So the biggest one is right now is finance, insurance, real estate employment that's went down. They have incurred the most amount of losses in the jobs right now. So if you're looking for work in the banking industry, in finance and insurance, it might be looking a little difficult right now. But at the same time, there are some verticals which have done better. So maybe, you can look at applying into some companies in the industries where, like there's an uptick in employment. So, but right now, industry-wide, Canadian finance, insurance, and real estate employment, it's been down about like 0.135% since the beginning of like 2023. Because if you look here, it topped here, then it just kind of goes down from there. So quite a bit of pain there. A lot of banks are laying people off. I'm sure you must have seen the news from like TD is letting people go, so is BMO. It's tough times. So now might be wondering, so what does it mean for me? So you've talked about all this data. How does this impact me? Well, this is kind of like where it becomes interesting. So first thing you got to think about is the job outlook. So if you're looking for employment, you got to know what's happening in the industry, right? So there's something to consider there. Of course, a lot of people here in Canada are immigrants. So exchange rate, think about that. Because as things get tougher, as you might not find work as much as you want, exchange rate is going to hurt you even more. And finally, the location, where you want to be, where you can look for opportunity, things like that. This will help you kind of like have some idea of like what's happening in different provinces and such, right? Because if you look at like year over year change, so in November 2022 to November 2023, the change in employment, transportation and warehousing, it has seen an increase of 9.8% in employment. Whereas on the same side, if you look at finance, insurance, and real estate, they've seen a decrease of 2.6% year over year. So that's quite a bit of like decrease there. Agriculture, they went down by 1.9%, and business building and other support services down by 1.3%. In November itself, a lot of retail people were let go. So sales jobs are being cut as well because people aren't buying as much. But if you look at year over year, you look at educational services, it's gone up by 3.7%. If you look at information, culture, and recreation, gone up by 7.5%. Other services except public admin, 7.6%. So there's some information here that you could probably refer to. Of course, all this is available in like Statistics Canada website, so you can get the information from there. So it might help you. And looking at October to November 2023% change. So look at this. Manufacturing went up by 1.6% in the month of November compared to October. Again, agriculture, they led to losses of like 1.4%. So that's kind of like there. So did finance, insurance, and real estate for like 1.3%. So, some of these sectors, see how they're performing, see which one you might have interest in, and you can start focusing your, job search or your research around where you want to move to. And if you're an immigrant or you're planning to come to Canada on your, student visa, or you're planning to move here, I would highly recommend that you look at what's happening in these industries. Look at where you want to be. And this will actually kind of like help you learn more about supply and demand in the job market. And then you can kind of like, prepare your education as such based on that. Of course, that's just one way of doing things. It's not for everyone, but it's still a way, and it still gives you a better chance of like, landing a job that you want to. Another thing. So here's the thing about immigration. And these are the numbers from Statistics Canada. So nearly 6 in 10, so that's like 58% of recent immigrants who are in the labor force faced challenges finding work in their field over the last 2 years. So about like 58.2% of people who came in the last 5 years, they had a tough time finding a job in their field. So, so maybe here's an example. If you were a banker back in, say, India, you moved to Canada, good chances you won't be able to find a job in banking for a bit. It'll take you a little bit of time. And the 3 main reasons for that was first of all, they did not have the Canadian job experience. It's one big thing that's kind of like putting people down. Second is they didn't have any connections in the job market. So that's 20.3% people. That was the issue they were facing. They did not know anyone here. And finally, lacking enough references from Canada. So Canadian job market, just like anywhere else in the world, it's like very reference oriented. So if you have references, it kind of helps you get at least to the interview. And that's just the way it is, right? So maybe brush up on these 3 things, focus on this, and then kind of there are some things you could do about it, some things you can't. So I'll really let you think about that. Now, exchange rate. Now, here's the thing. As the economy kind of goes down, and unemployment rate kind of goes up, slowly the dollar is going to, the Canadian dollar, it'll start improving a bit. It'll start going higher. Now let's look at the Canadian dollar to Indian rupee. And I took for the last 5 years, that's what I'm going to start with. So in 2019, $1, it would be around 54 rupees. So here, right? Then COVID came, it kind of fell here during COVID. So it started slowly going up. Then post-COVID, earlier in 2020, late 2022, we were at about 62 point something there. Again, we hit the high here again in 2023, and now the dollar is going up again. So it's going to be more expensive for you to live in Canada if you don't have a job and your parents are supporting you from India. So, get ready to spend a little bit more money, because that's where the dollar is going. Because at least in the last year, it's just been ranging between $62 up until say about 59, 58 kind of thing. So it's looking a little difficult, but at the same time, if you're sending money back home, hey, this works in your favor. So there you go. Kind of good to know, right? So that'll help you out there. Again, when we look at, location wise, we would consider where we could move to, what we could do in the future, where we could work. For example, if you're in Ontario and that's where you're planning to go as a student, maybe don't. Maybe focus in BC, or maybe focus in, Alberta, still lower but higher than BC, or even Saskatchewan, or Manitoba. So just some policies that you gotta think about before you make the move, before you come to Canada, before you think, oh, I'm going to go to Canada, I'll go study in Toronto, I'll find work. Well, unemployment rate there is pretty high. So maybe spend 2 years in any of these provinces, and by the time things get better, you can move. And of course, a lot of people, what they do is they move to PEI for their PR. Well, right now, unemployment rate is 8.1%. So it's going to get tricky for you. So as an international student here in Canada, I would really start focusing on what I have to do in the coming few years, because it's going to get tougher. So start strategizing right now. And this is important. You have to strategize based on these numbers, right? So that's where the economy is heading. You got to work with it. So there you go. Those are the latest numbers that came out just yesterday. I hope you find them useful. Again, if you're a student coming to Canada, if you're planning on being here, strategize, work on like what you want to do, focus on where you want to be. So I hope this helps you. If you have any questions, of course, drop them in the comments. I'll do my best to answer. Good luck.